Please help me welcome J. Lauren Norris.
You know, it's amazing to me how many people want to complain and argue after the fact when they had a chance to speak their opinion, and while the door was open to speak their opinion, they had nothing to say. That's what I want to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders.
Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom.
I'm J. Lauren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast, and it really does amaze me how often people, they want to express their opinion way after the decision has already been made. And genuinely, and most often, that opinion is deep-seated, it's passionate, it's ideological, they have great reasoning behind the opinion that they hold. Well, okay, maybe that's an overgeneralization. Because what I do find with a lot of people who don't get involved in the process, they don't show up while the decision is being made. They don't have any way to express or any desire to express the passions that they hold about the ideological treatise along the way. They only want to wait until it's affecting their life on a daily basis, and then they want to argue about it. And a lot of times that argument is not well founded. It's not well researched. They have no idea what they're talking about. They have a misconception of what that premise really is tied to. They have no idea what the foundational ideology is underneath the premise. They want to argue with what they perceive to be the results of an outcome that is yet unknown just because they want to argue. Now, I see this across the board for people who are emotionally reactive to results they don't like. But it usually waits until it's very personal. It's about them and them alone. And at this point, they have an emotional, often vitriolic response to an undesired outcome that's personal in nature. They didn't ask the question, where did this idea come from? Where did this start? I'll give you an example of when New York decided to make itself a sanctuary city. Those were politicians who were voted into office. They had all the power and all the authority to make that decision. And at the time that they were voted into office, nobody thought anything about what the impact of a sanctuary city might be. I mean, they're so far from the border, the southern border at least, what does it really matter? And nobody really thought about the daily impact of that until recently I heard someone say, as a black man, I have to step over the bodies of other black homeless men as I watch immigrants who are not legally here step over the same bodies of homeless black men to spend the night in a 5-star hotel on my taxpayer dime. Oh, well, I would agree that's a problem. That's an issue. In fact, that's a big problem. That's a big issue. Here's the real question, though. When was the proper time to argue about, to defend, to at least discuss the ideology that if people come against policy, against law, against the better interest of the American people into our nation, and we give them thousands or perhaps tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars in assistance and aid and et cetera, when we have our own American-born citizens in dire need, our own American-born citizens who were also veterans who fought in a time of war to defend the right to vote, and they're in need, and yet they're literally being stepped over, passed by, overlooked, ignored in their need, in order to provide sustenance to someone who hasn't contributed, hasn't earned, hasn't gone through the legal process to make themselves an American citizen. That's to me, that's a problem. But what I really want you to see is that the voting process that put the people in office to make that policy the standard, most of the people who are really up in arms about the issue right now had nothing to say when those people were elected into office. Now, as a leader, my conjecture to you is that if you lead, and you don't have to agree with me, you might believe that immigrants are more important than veterans. You might truly believe that it's more important that we take people from all over the world, regardless of their ideology, regardless of their citizenship, regardless of their worldview, regardless of their religious stances, and we bring them into the country and we give them voice and place, and we let them vote, and we let them take advantage of our social services, and that's more important than the veterans who have been born here and served here. You may hold that opinion. And I don't hold that against you. I disagree with it, but it's okay that we disagree. Here's what's not okay. That you say nothing. That's not acceptable. If you lead, you don't have the right to be silent. If you lead, you have the responsibility to speak up. Now, I would expect, I would hope, I would encourage you, I would challenge, I dare you, as a leader, to speak your mind on these things. I don't care what your opinion is, as long as it's educated, as long as you've done your homework, as long as you've looked into both the history of the notion and the potential outcomes of it. As long as you've honestly asked the question, what happens if I vote this way? I mean, not just because someone else tells you to, or I don't care if it's a celebrity or a religious leader. Their decision may be influential to your decision, but it shouldn't make your decision for you. Your own research, your own discoveries, your own experiences, those should make your decision for you. Your ability to perceive, to analyze, to think through, to craft your own opinion. That's how you should decide. And as a leader, to remain silent, that's not an option. I mean, obviously, it is an option. It's a horrible option. It's an irresponsible option. As a leader, you influence other people. That's what leadership is, influence, nothing more and nothing less. And I'm not saying that you should influence them to vote one way or the other. I really don't care. I care a lot more that you do your homework and you get involved in the process than I care who you vote for. Because if you say nothing, you know that there are people who hold particular worldviews. A Christian worldview, a Buddhist worldview, an atheist worldview. And among that populace of people, on average, 30 to 40% cast a ballot. Whichever worldview you hold, whichever political ideology you hold, if only 1/3 of the people who agree with you have the courage to speak their mind when it comes to the ballot box, how much influence does your worldview have? Surely it impacts you and you individually, and that's great. Maybe it impacts you and your family. Maybe it impacts you and your family and your community, your school board. Maybe it impacts you and your family and your school board and your local zip code, your neighborhood, maybe the whole city, maybe the county, maybe the state, maybe the region. But if the global politics, which are currently being forced on all of the world, if you think I'm kidding, zoom out for a minute and ask yourself, what happened in Sri Lanka that looks like what happened in Venezuela, that looks like what happened in Brazil, that looks like what happened in the US? It will blow your mind. What's going on right now in Amsterdam and in most of Europe that looks very familiar to the people in Canada, that looks very familiar to people in the Midwest states where the farmers are? What's going on politically speaking that makes Amsterdam and Ohio so similar? If you knew the answer to that question and you remain silent, there's a big problem. And if you don't know the answer to that question, it's because you've been lied to, or you've been misled, or you just are too busy with what's going on in your home, in your neighborhood, in your school district, in your state, to realize that when you have the opportunity that you have today, Super Tuesday in the United States of America, to voice your opinion on a national ballot, to go, hold up, I stand on the side of the farmers in Amsterdam. I stand on the side of the farmers in Ohio. I believe that they have been misled, mistreated, taken advantage of, shoved into a corner, and I don't want to see that anymore. You have the chance to speak that opinion today is the day for you to get out and vote and say, I don't like the way that's being done. Now, for other people, there are completely different issues. Again, issues that divide us. Issues that people look at and go, well, I'm willing to pay more in taxes to provide these services. And I believe that a woman has a right to choose and to choose what bathroom they go to, choose what sport they participate in, choose what they do with their bodies. The woman has a right to choose. Fine. If that's what's important to you to vote on that. But vote. Vote. Speak your mind. Because if you wait 2 months, 2 years, 2 decades, and then you ask the question, what happened to my daughter's right to decide what team she plays on, whether it's male or female or both? Well, the fact that you didn't vote might be the reason that she doesn't have that right anymore. In fact, there are some, and I disagree with their conclusion. I don't believe that the premise that they started with comes to the conclusion that they're voicing, but there are some who believe that the wrong vote today will mean that women won't have a right to vote in the future. I don't see any evidence to their conjecture, but if that's an issue to you, if that's something that you fear, if that's something you hold in great value, vote. Get off the couch. Go vote. Go do something. If you voted already, awesome. Encourage your neighbor to go do the same. If they haven't already voted, today is the day. Today is the last day. Today is the last chance you have in this cycle to voice your opinion. After this, you're just spitting in the wind. Today is the last chance to put your name on the ballot. Now, I will say, again, from a leadership standpoint, there are a whole lot of people who would love to have something to say about what's going on today who don't have the right to have an opinion. They're not citizens of our nation. Some are very high-level politicos of other nations. Some are very high financial investors from other nations who look at our nation and go, if it goes one way, my business benefits. If it goes the other way, my business fails. And they would love to put their 2 cents or 20 cents or $20 trillion into the voting process by way of buying a politician or buying a vote, or, as has happened in the past, spending $500,000 or more to put voting boxes in various places to gather ballots that may or may not have legitimately counted. But they don't have the right to vote. If you do, you must. If you have every legal right to vote as an American citizen who filled out a voter registration card, who surrendered their time to go to the ballot and say, here's what I think, then you must. Because as you don't, others who don't have that right will fill your spot. Not only will they fill your spot, they'll fill your spot with their own ideologies, their own thoughts. They will Sri Lanka your America. They will do in the Congo what they did, or they will do in America what they did in the Congo. They'll do in America what they did in Venezuela, what they did in Brazil, what they did in Cuba. And if you don't know what that looks like, find a history book. Do some reading, do some research. The evidence is there. It's all provable. And it's up to you to know. There are a whole lot of things in this life that are yet unknown, a whole lot of things in this life that we just can't know. And if we did know, we wouldn't fully understand, and that's okay. But so much as you can know, you must know. And if you know, then you must vote. And if you don't vote, then we get to the other side of it, and we're dealing with the results, or we're dealing with the outcomes, or we're dealing with the global impact of the leader of this nation. You got nothing to say. At that point, your opinion is spitting in the wind. Today, it matters. Tomorrow, it's just conjecture. Today, you have the right to insert your opinion into the decision-making process. Tomorrow, you get to watch the outcome and hope that it's the result that you wanted, and that you can live with the ultimate consequences of the outcome that you chose not to participate in. If you're a leader, silence is not really a wise option. It's not a respectable option. It's not a viable option. It is an option. It's just not a good one. At a minimum, educate yourself and get out and vote. And I encourage you to find other people who share your ideologies, who share your opinions, and encourage them to get out and vote as well. I'm J. Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day and go vote.
Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. I encourage you to go to storypoweracademy.com and check it out. Look at the different classes, the different levels, the different things that are available. You can take a lot of them a la carte. But spend some time there and see if that's the kind of thing that would change the way you communicate as a leader, as a pastor, as a counselor, as a political leader. And if that will help you, I'd love to have a conversation with you. Again, only 10 people in the Elite Speakers. You will have to apply for that. But if you're a candidate, I'd love to have that conversation with you. I'm J. Loren Norris with Story Power Academy. I look forward to seeing you inside.